What's relative pricing and how we are falling for it?
Right. So we are, as I said earlier in the interview, we are not mathematical creatures. We're really not evolved to naturally understand numbers and their computation in absolute terms. And if you think about how hard you have to work to teach a child to do math, we don't have an automatic intuitive sense of mathematics. But we do have like some cognitive skills that do come automatically. For example, you don't have to teach a child how to speak. They will adopt the language that they hear, and they'll learn how to do it. And that's what they do. So why this matters in terms of evaluation is we will value things in relative terms, not absolute terms. So we don't have any genetic programming to understand 12 plus 5 equals 17. Right? That has to be taught and it has to be learned. However, we do have a sense that 17 is more than 12. That we have a natural intuitive sense for. So we're very, very, very good at relative comparisons and evaluations and very poor at absolute ones. Here's how that matters. If you go in and you want to buy a pair of pants at the store and you see a price that says $30, you have some sense of what that costs and what you'd have to give up to do that. However, what you don't have is an absolute sense of what that might be worth. And here's how I can tell you that. If you walk in and see a pair of pants that's $30 and another pair of pants that says $30 and above it is a sticker that says $50 with an X through it, you will immediately value those pair of jeans more than the others. And in fact, wine sellers know this all the time. If they have a bottle of wine, $15, and it's not selling, the easiest way to get it to fly off the shelves is to put another sticker above it that says 25 and then put an X through it because it's been marked down. We understand the relative differences. And to me, $15 for a bottle of wine, that's on the more expensive side. But if you tell me it's a $25 marked down to 15, I've suddenly got a good deal. And so I now, will go for it. And the whole field of marketing and advertising, they know this and they know how we do it. Rarely do you walk into a retailer anymore and see just a single number on the price tag. Right? It's always, everything's marked down everywhere you go almost. You never see things except at really high-end stores. And at those really high-end stores, those same jeans will be $100 and people will line up to pay it if they can afford it. And the reason why is they're advertising their status. They're advertising their wealth. They want to spend, $400 on a purse. And it's not just that they want to spend it. They want people to know that they can spend $400 on a purse. That's what's so interesting about it. So this is when two of our flaws sort of collide. But the point is that we're not good at absolute mathematics. We're good at relative mathematics and comparisons. So the math of large numbers is very easy to get us tripped up. But in smaller numbers, we're good at comparisons. And that's why, and our whole sort of economic psychology has to do with relative evaluation, not absolute evaluation.
Now, there's also another thing they do in marketing is that they add another, so they have, let's say the more expensive wine is 100. Another way to sell is to introduce a new wine that costs $500, and then the $100 sounds very lucrative. It's like, okay, I'm not buying the most expensive one, I'm buying the mid-range one. Even though you would never buy it. You would never buy the $100.
That's right. They've done experiments with this too, where they don't even have to change the price of the bottle. They just have to change what's around it, what's marketed right around it, and it will change the way that you value it. And if we had an absolute sense of evaluation, that wouldn't matter. But we don't. We have a relative sense of valuation, and that's and I consider it a glitch and a flaw. I'm sure that it was good enough in the past. But it's really easy to take advantage of people, and it's really easy for whole countries to be taken advantage of when we're doing everything in those relative terms. So, but if you can imagine life in a much simpler time where mathematics were never an advantage, relative was good enough, and it was always fairly accurate. So this is not a case where we adapted wrongly. It's just the case of mathematics was just not part of our past, absolute mathematics. And so it was just a skill that we didn't have. Our skills in relative valuations are actually pretty impressive. Other animals have these too. They really can tell the difference between 4 and 3, for example. Birds can do it. Other creatures can do it. They can count in a sense. But that's just for those relative means. And it's still, I think, an impressive amount of computation that we can do in relative terms. But the absolute value numbers is not something that we can really resonate with. We have to learn it painfully in most cases.
You think it's a product of lack of data or lack of information in regard? Let's say you knew everything about those wines, or it's just we were not equipped.
I mean, yeah, we're really not equipped. What can happen? We're not well equipped from the start. But what can happen is that you can learn to become better at it, right? So if you become an expert in wine, then you will no longer be swayed by the various price gimmicks that they're engaging in, and marketing tricks and all of that. So if you become well versed in wine, that's how that will go. And the same is true for anything else. But just think of how much learning you have to do before you really get to that point. And you can only do that for a few things, and then you'll be taken advantage of elsewhere. So we just live in a world that is much more intricate and complex than we did in the past. And so we have these, some people say, Stone Age brains in a modern world. But remember, the modern world was built by a bunch of us with Stone Age brains. The difference is that when you put our brains together, and this is really where we move beyond other animals, when you put all of our brains together, we're much more powerful than just the sum of our brains, because we have division of labor, and we also have the accumulation of cultural knowledge. So each generation just adds on to what other generations have. And you really don't see that very much in other animals. We're starting to see little things with tool making, and one thing that's always said is that all animals learn, but only humans teach. So like intentional, learning like that. And so that really puts us in a whole different category. But it means that any one individual is totally ill-equipped to deal with the knowledge set of the culture. The knowledge is dispersed among all of the individuals. And in fact, we've seen the most famous example of this is in Tasmania. The Aborigines, too, in Tasmania live very differently, and they've lost a lot of the tools and sophistication that their ancestors on the mainland of Australia had, because they went through a population bottleneck. And any time the population shrinks, the reservoir of cultural knowledge shrinks with it. And so no individual can know everything. You rely on the population and the transmission of knowledge and dispersal of knowledge throughout. And so when populations contract, you can lose entire skills, entire professions can get lost because there's no one left to teach. And so that's really the power of cultural evolution over biological evolution. We don't have to learn each thing step by step, one by one. We inherit everything that our ancestors learned as a culture and then add to it each generation.
I love it. Thank you.